I'm Erin. Welcome to My Beautiful Unschool Life, the YouTube channel where I share with the whole world while I try to do hard things that I don't know how to do and make loads of mistakes on the way. Because the internet is full of people pretending to be perfect. But instead I've decided to try and be honest. Today I am talking about why I have chosen to live the way that I do. I live in a tiny house that I built by myself with almost no building experience. I grow my own food, almost completely self-taught, and I homeschool my children with a philosophy called unschooling, which by its very nature means I just make it up as I go. So I'm going to elaborate on that in this video today, while trying to sew curtains. And I just need to say, I hate sewing. I'm not good at sewing. I don't want to be good at sewing. So please don't tell me that I'm doing it wrong, because I know that I'm doing it wrong. There are a million other things that I want to be good at. I do not have time to get good at sewing. I am only sewing because my house needs curtains and I'm poor. I had yards of this fabric that I bought to reupholster my camper years ago, and then it turned out my camper was kind of a hunk of junk, and reupholstering it would be a waste of fabric. So the fabric has been sitting in storage for 3 years, and now I have pulled it out to make curtains. And it's actually a really good fabric for curtains because it's really heavy, and I love how bright and colorful it is, and I like bright colors. So I'm using this to make curtains. They're not good curtains, they're not perfect curtains, but they will keep out the drafts and keep out the sunlight. And that is all I need. So let's just get that out of the way. Don't watch what I'm doing because I'm going to make 700 mistakes. I'm not teaching anyone how to make curtains. Okay, so why do I live like this? I kind of figured out that there's like 4 themes. There's 4 main reasons. Because you don't live like this for just one reason. You have to live like this for all the reasons. You can't choose a difficult life unless you're really very, very strongly motivated, because you're going to want to quit all the time. And if you don't have a good, strong motivation, multiple reasons why you're doing it, you're just going to quit when it gets hard. So I have a lot of reasons why I live like this. The number one reason I'm going to talk about, because this is the number one reason that everybody asks me about, is money. Yeah, absolutely. This is cheaper. So when my marriage fell apart, my husband had to buy me out of the house. We'd only lived in that house for 2 years, so it wasn't a lot of money, but I got a lump sum of money. And I knew I had to spend that money wisely because I would never ever have money like that again in my life. Unless my YouTube channel goes completely viral, in which case, hey, mansion on 100 acres. That's what I'm going to go for. But in the meantime, it was I knew I had one chance to use that money wisely. If I had rented a 1-bedroom apartment for my children and I to live in, that money would have run out in 2 years. I've already been living in this tiny house for 2 years, so this house has already paid for itself. I did go slightly over budget on building the house, but if I had rented an apartment, we'd be out of money already. So right away, absolutely, living this style of life has saved me money. Yes, the building costs were used up the entire chunk of cash, but I don't have a mortgage, I don't pay rent, I don't pay electricity, I don't pay property taxes, I don't pay house insurance. I don't think anyone would insure this thing. I don't pay for water. I don't have any of those monthly expenses that you have when you're either renting or owning a property. Now, I don't have any stability if something happens to so my house is parked on my boyfriend Don's property. If something happens to him, if something happens to us, then I am up the creek without a paddle. But if you rent, you also have that same instability. But at least I have... Oh, the kettle's boiling. Okay, so I don't have stability, but if something were to happen and I had to move, I have a house and it's on wheels. I can take it with me. I don't really know where I would go, but I'm not down to nothing. I still have my house if I have to move. I imagine people think it's a bit cheeky that I don't pay rent to live on my boyfriend's property, but our arrangement is that I feed him. I grow all this food and he benefits because he gets to eat healthy, home-cooked, homegrown meals most days of the week. There are days that he eats on his own and I don't cook for him. That is the arrangement that we have. The life that I'm living, the only bills that I pay is my phone bill, my car insurance, and my credit card. And that's it. It keeps it nice and simple. Living in a tiny house is absolutely financially beneficial. I have had to make a lot of sacrifice. It's not easy to live with no running water, no fridge and freezer, no proper toilet, heated by a wood stove. This isn't easy, but it costs me in time and labor rather than in money. And that's a choice that I was happy to make. So growing food financially, it's not really cheaper to grow your own food. I could probably buy groceries for the same amount of money that I spend on seeds and bird food and baby chickens, all of that stuff I could get in the grocery store, but the food that I'm growing is cleaner. It doesn't travel from a long distance. I know where it's come from. I know how it's been treated. And I know that it is healthier for me than the stuff that I can afford in the grocery store. I can't afford the healthy food in the grocery store. I can only afford the cheap processed food in the grocery store. So on that level, living like this, growing my own food, it's the only way I can afford to put healthy food on the table. Now, I do still go grocery shopping. I do still spend money on groceries. I don't grow all of my own food. I'm not that talented. And my kids like wheat and grain and pasta too much, and I can't grow that here. I don't have enough land for that. So I do still go grocery shopping, but I spend in about a month what I would have spent in a week prior to growing my own food. So it's definitely saving me money there. There are costs to feeding the animals, but when I sell eggs, that basically offsets the costs of the chicken feed. If we ever get around to selling meat, in theory, we would be able to make enough money off of selling meat in order to... and then the stuff that I sell at the farmer's market, that helps to offset the costs of my seeds and building my greenhouse and running the grow lights and so on and so forth in the spring. I don't think the farm will ever make me money, but it's offsetting the cost of my lifestyle. So in that situation, yeah, it's saving me money. Now, homeschooling, on the other hand, homeschooling does not save me money at all. It would be so much better for me financially to put my kids in school and to get a job or have more time to invest in the garden or in finishing the house or in taking care of the animals. That homeschooling is not economically beneficial. There is nothing working for me on that front. But some things aren't about money. In fact, for me, most things aren't about money. I don't have a healthy relationship with money. I hate money. I'd rather live in a world where money didn't exist. And you can kind of see that by the life that I've built. I am kind of trying to build a life where money doesn't really exist. I don't want to deal with money. I don't want to think about money. I don't like money. I think I heard a phrase once that there's such a thing as money trauma. I would say I have money trauma. So in that way, hiding in my little bubble is working really well for me because I can kind of live in a world where money doesn't really exist that much. Okay, number one reason I live like this is because of money. The number two reason I live like this is for my mental and my physical health. I explained in the previous video that I have severe anxiety and severe depression, and I learned a long time ago that overstimulation triggers my anxiety, and my anxiety triggers my depression. So what I really need for my mental health is I need to be in nature. I need to be surrounded by birds and trees, and I need to be able to hear the wind, and I need to see the sunset, and I need to see the full moon and the stars at night, and I need to be able to breathe clean air, and I can't have the vibrations of people and cars and buildings around me. That makes me so much sicker. So living like this is something that I absolutely need to do for my mental health. When it comes to my physical health, I'm exercising every day. I am out there, I am carrying buckets, I am shoveling, I am using my body in a way that when I used to be an academic and I used to sit in front of a computer all day, I would just have nonstop headaches all the time because it's just not healthy for me to sit in front of a screen. But when I used to be a waitress and wait tables and I was on my feet all day, that wasn't healthy for me. That was too hard on my body. It was too much impact. It was too much stress on this broken body. So the life that I have right now is a really lovely balance because I do get a lot of exercise. I do carry a lot of, I'm doing chores, I'm working in the garden, I'm shoveling, I'm raking, I'm pitchforking, I'm carrying buckets. All of those things are good for me, but it's not constant. It's not all day. I do spend time sort of sitting on my butt among the tomato plants, picking weeds, or sitting at my computer working on YouTube videos. This life has a really good balance for me of just the right amount of physical labor and just the right amount of not having to push myself. But I can also decide how far I push myself and when I take breaks. A reason that I have a very hard time holding a normal job in the real world is because I probably lose a day a week, sometimes as much as 3 days a week, to migraines, anxiety attacks, depression attacks. It's really hard to keep a real job when you have days where you crash like that. Now, when I am up, I am one of the most productive people I do. I do 3 times as much in a day as most people do, but then I lose 2-3 days a week. So running my own farm, making my own decisions about how I spend my time, that's a really, really wonderful thing that I'm able to do. Whereas when I have a job, I push through. I go to work on the days when I feel crappy, and that means that it takes me longer to heal, and it means that I just lose my resilience, and it wears me down and wears me down and wears me down. So it's really important for me to have a lifestyle where I can go on my good days and rest on my bad days. So in that way, this lifestyle works really well for me. But also, I learned a long time ago with my mental health, when I'm in a depression spot, I'll just stay in bed all day for day after day. So the good thing about having all these animals, having all these responsibilities, is that I have to get out of bed at least twice a day. I have to get up once in the morning and once in the evening to do my chores. And that's really good for me. It's also, doing chores is something I really enjoy doing. A lot of farmers are always trying to find shortcuts to make chores easier, and I can understand the appeal of that, especially if you're a person who has a busy life and you want to be off the farm every day or on a regular basis. Whereas I don't want to be off the farm. My favorite thing is doing chores. I love how happy I feel when I give fresh water to my ducks. It's just the most wonderful joy. Or the way the bunny hops when I give him fresh hay. Like, it really cheers me up. When I'm in a really bad place, getting up out of bed and going to do chores is one of the things that helps me come out of the really bad place. So, number 2, living like this is very good for my physical and my mental health. Number 3 on the list is, it's really good for my kids' physical and mental health too. Hold on, I need to do some measuring again. So there's no TV in my house. We don't have a TV. We do have my laptop. We do have a tablet. Even in the winter, the house is so small and there are so few things that you can do in here. It's hard for us to spend all day inside. We are always outside. We are always breathing fresh air. We are always running around the property. We're always outside. The children help with chores every day, which is something that I really believe strongly that they need to do. I don't think every child needs to do chores. I don't think every child needs to do anything. I think every child is different, and there is no one right way to raise kids. You got to know your kid. You got to judge based on their situation. So for my children, physical activity is essential to their success in life. They're both ADHD. And when I say ADHD, I don't mean that as a diagnosis, as something that's wrong with them and needs to be medicated and treated. I think of ADHD as a brain type. We all have different types of brains. Some of those types have names and some of those types don't have names. The type of brain I have doesn't have a name. There are various terms for it. Some people would say that I'm an empath. Some people say a super feeler. Some people say highly sensitive. There are other things about me that overlap with ADHD and with autism. I have a very specific type of brain, and part of what you need to do in life is learn what kind of brain you have and learn how to use it. And the type of brain that my children have is often referred to as an ADHD brain, and what they need is a lot of physical activity. They need to move. They need to be out there using their bodies and being active. So that is a big part of the reason why I homeschool, because my children just would not do well sitting on their butts in a room full of kids all day long. And then they would beat themselves up because they don't do well in that environment, and they would slowly grow to hate themselves, and I don't want that. I need them to grow up in an environment where they're not seen as dysfunctional. Therefore, we live out here in the middle of nowhere. Obviously, it is not perfect. There are pros to going to school. For instance, it would be really good if my children could learn to take instructions from adults other than me. It would be really good if my children could spend more time with other children. We have had a very hard time finding other homeschoolers. Every time we do make friends with homeschoolers, they end up going back to school. So it's not perfect by any means whatsoever, but I do love how much time my children spend in nature. So they do help with chores. That's part of their daily routine. I believe that the only way you learn how to do hard things is by doing hard things. So I expect my children to do hard things. And that's what this life is. They see how hard I'm working every day, all day long, and it normalizes hard work. So as they get older, they will understand that hard work is part of what you do in life. I argue with myself a lot about whether what I'm doing for my kids is the right thing or not. I think all parents do argue with themselves a lot, and I think that's because I think everyone agrees that we live in a broken world. I think we all disagree on who broke it and how to fix it. But I think everyone agrees that we live in a broken world. And it's very hard to raise healthy kids in a broken world. Because on the one hand, I want them to be healthy, but on the other hand, they need to be able to function in this world. So it's really difficult to decide how much of the world do I shelter them from and how much of the world do I expose them to. And that's a balance that I don't think anyone knows how to approach. I don't think anyone knows the right way to do this. This generation, we're doing something that no one has ever done in the history of humankind. There is no roadmap. There are no instructions. There are certain red flags, like we all know that the internet is not good for our children's mental health. We all know that screens are not good for our children's mental health, but we also know that that's how our world functions. So if they're completely computer illiterate, they're not going to be able to function in this world very well. So it's a really tricky thing trying to find the balance. Now, luckily, their father lives 100% in this modern world that we're in. So when they go to their fathers, it's computers, it's video games, it's screen time. So they are getting a bit of a balance of the two different realities. So I think between the two homes, there is a bit of a balance. But I mean, I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. And if you think that you know that I'm doing the wrong thing, I gotta say, you don't know what you're talking about. It's complicated. There is no one right way to do this. But I do think that living like this is giving my children perspective that there is no one right way to live. That you have to figure out what works for you. And then you need to have the courage to go out and do it. So while I know with 100% certainty that I am messing my kids up, hopefully I am also giving them a good foundation so they're not as messed up as they could be. So that's number 3. Number 4, and I gotta say, I numbered these backwards. I started with the one that's the least important to me, and I'm ending with the one that's the most important to me. The most important reason why I live like this is because this lifestyle is true to my values. One of the things I talked about in my last video, where I talked about who would live like this, I talked a little bit about my core values. And ultimately, the most important of my core values is that I want the world to be a better place because I was in it. You always leave things better than what you found it. And that is what I should do on this earth. And so in line with that, I really wanted to live a life that was sustainable and ethical and natural. I do believe in climate change. I find it hard to believe that people could think that an ecosystem would survive what we have done to it. I look out my window and I see empty fields everywhere I look, where there used to be forest. You look at a city, Toronto used to be a forest, and now it is miles upon miles upon miles upon miles of concrete and high-rises and factories and vehicles pumping CO2 into the air. I don't know how. I live up the road from a garbage dump that takes the garbage from a nearby city, just one city, and I can smell it from miles away. There is no way that this many people can live on a planet and change it this much without it damaging the ecosystem. So it is extremely important to me to try to do as little damage to the ecosystem as I possibly can. Now, just existing, I am doing damage to the ecosystem. I don't think that I can possibly make the world a better place in this way. But I can lessen the amount of damage that I'm doing. And to do that, I grow my own food. I grow my own vegetables and I raise my own meat because that is something that I can do. I'm not going to tell you that that's what you should do because it's your life and only you know what you can do. This is what I know that I can do, and this is what I am willing to do. And so this is what I do. I grow my own food so that it doesn't have to be brought on a ship from China. I raise my own chickens so that they don't have to be trucked from a massive barn to a massive butcher to a massive depot to a massive grocery store. I try as best as I can to take some strain off of the system by growing as much of my own food as I can. It is not perfect, but it's something that I can do. I don't rely on fertilizers the way large-scale farming relies on fertilizers. I don't rely on machines the way that large-scale food production relies on machines. I'm just taking the tiniest amount off of the top, but it's something that I can do. And so I feel good for doing it. I try to also raise my meat in a way that's ethical. I love animals. I would love all my animals to be 100% free and to not have to be kept contained. I would love them to be able to live a life like a wild animal, but then they wouldn't be safe. So I try to find a really tricky balance between producing my own food in a way that's ethical while trying to care for them, while trying to protect them from a dangerous world. I don't think it is sustainable to be a vegan because that requires a certain amount of strain on a system, because I can't produce the meat alternatives myself. I can't grow nuts where I live. I can't grow the amount of soy that I would need. I could hunt, I suppose. That is sort of an ethical, sustainable way to get protein. But there is no perfect solution to meeting a human's protein needs. And I am choosing this one imperfect way, which is I try to raise meat as kindly and as ethically as I can so that I can meet my protein needs without doing as much harm as I would if I did it other ways. That's a really fancy dance, isn't it? It's a really fancy dance to try to explain because it is complicated. And people want to pretend that it's not complicated. But the truth is, it is complicated. If you're living a vegan lifestyle, you need to get your protein from somewhere. And usually it's mass produced. And anytime something is mass produced, it's destructive. There is no happy, easy solution. A lot of the things that vegetarians and vegans worry about, it's really only large scale meat production that creates those problems. Once you start growing on a smaller scale, you can take better care of your animals. You can actually treat them like living things rather than a commodity. It means it's more expensive, but that's something that I can do. That is something that I can do. So while my choices of where my food comes from don't necessarily make the world a better place, I like to think that I am not making the world a significantly worse place to support my dietary needs. And that's the best I can do. Another value that I'm meeting by living like this is that I have learned that there is nothing more fulfilling than producing something. Our world really sends us this message. Corporations really send us this message that things will make you happy. Consuming will make you happy. Getting new things is what will make you happy. And it's just not true. What actually makes you happy is working hard and producing something and looking at that thing that you produced and how good it feels to say, I did that. I made that. It's kind of an addictive feeling, producing something completely by myself and saying, I did that. The number of times that I just look at this house with awe and amazement because I did this. I did this. I took a pile of wood and I made a house. That's just the coolest thing ever. And absolutely, it is an imperfect house. It is far from perfect, but I produced this myself. It's the best feeling in the world. And so that's a big part of the reason why I live the way that I live, because I'm addicted to the feeling, the pride that you get from producing something rather than consuming something. But also it's just kind of cool. So I have this fantasy that I'm working on and I don't even know how to begin. But when I processed the rabbits, there was a load of fat left over. So I rendered it down into, I've been using the word tallow, but apparently tallow only refers to fat that's been rendered from beef. There's a different word for rabbits. There's a different word for chickens. I do not know this world at all, but I have a fantasy of using my own fats, and I've been saving the ash from my wood stove so that I could make my own lye. And I think it would be so cool to make my own soap entirely 100% from things that I produced on my farm. So using my own lavender for the smells. And I think I would need to have another kind of oil. So maybe you can make oil from pumpkin seeds or from sunflower seeds. So this is sort of a long-term fantasy that I have to produce my own soap completely 100% from my own products, which I have no time for whatsoever. I need to be taking things off my plate, not putting things on my plate. So this is probably more of a long-term fantasy. But if anybody's watching this and they want to come to my house and teach me how to do this, please, I need a soap mentor is what I need. But But yes, that's part of the reason I live like this, because I find producing things entirely myself gives me a sense of pride and fulfillment unlike anything else that I've ever done. So that's part of the reason that I live like this. And then the final reason that I live like this is because a few years ago, I decided to try and make all my choices based out of love and not fear. I don't succeed very often. A lot of my choices are made out of fear. But I am trying to live my life from a place of love. A place of love for myself, a place of love for this planet, a place of love for the food that I eat, a place of love for my children and the life that they could have, rather than a place of fearing, where is my food going to come from? Fearing, how am I going to put a roof on my head? Fearing, how much am I going to damage my children? I'm trying to make choices from my heart rather than from this part of my lizard brain in the back here, which is scared all the time. And that's what got me here. That's what got my house onto Dawn's property. I was afraid to get myself into another relationship after how much of a train wreck my last relationship was. But I had to make my choice out of love and not out of fear. And maybe it will all go completely wrong in the end. Maybe my house will burn down and everything will go completely wrong. All my chickens will die of some virus. All of my rabbits will get eaten by a coyote. Maybe it will all go terribly wrong. But I can't make decisions out of fear, because all I will have will be fear and failure. As if I make my choices out of love, then I'll have love and failure. So if you ever wondered why a person would choose to build their own house and grow their own food and homeschool their own kids all by themselves, now you know why. It is financially easier. It is healthier for my mind and my body, and for my children's minds and my children's bodies. And it's aligned with my values, my desire to make the world a better place, my drive to produce more and consume less, and my need to make choices out of love and not fear. And I'm so glad that you joined me for this ride. You guys are the best. I'll see you next time. Take care.
properly. I don't want to have to do the thing where I do this over and over and over again. Please. Now I have curtains in my bathroom. It's a nice curtain.